So, WrestleMania 37, Night 2, and one of the featured matches on tonight's show is for the Raw Women's Championship. It's for Raw Women's Champion Asuka defending against Rhea Ripley, who, of course, has just come up from NXT. Now, this one's interesting. The Raw Women's Championship picture is really interesting. There's a lot to break down into it. There's a lot to talk about, and maybe pick apart slightly. Maybe is a right way of looking at it. When it comes to Asuka, look, Asuka, the year that she's had, the past 12 months she's had, you've got to credit her. You have to credit her, considering that when they moved to the Performance Center because of the pandemic last year, and Asuka was already doing good stuff with Kairi Sane, the Kabuki Warriors, and all that kind of stuff. She was feuding with Becky Lynch. They had a great match at the Royal Rumble last year. And there was lots of good stuff that she was doing. But then they moved to the Performance Center, and arguably there wasn't a better female performer, or just performer in general, actually, irrespective of gender. There wasn't a better performer than Asuka during those early Performance Center shows. When they had no crowd, when they had the hard camera-facing seats that were still set up but nobody was in there, when it was a real cold show and it was tough to watch, Asuka got it. She was entertaining, so much so that they were having, I think it was a random match, it might have been Andrade versus someone. It's on those first Raws from the Performance Center. And suddenly, Asuka's out there on commentary. She's just randomly out there on commentary. And at the time, it seemed really odd. Why is Asuka out there cheering on Andrade or Angel Garza or whoever it was? And in reality, she was out there because she was entertaining. And that show was just devoid of any form of entertainment. And she was getting so over without a crowd being there. And that's what she was. She was getting over without a crowd being there, that when Becky Lynch had to step away from WWE and it was revealed that she was pregnant, she was going on maternity leave, there was only ever really one person that should have been the Raw Women's Champion, and that was Asuka. There was only one person that could pick up that mantle and keep going, and that was Asuka. Now, unfortunately, since that's happened, look, I don't want to say she hasn't been booked well, because let's face it, she's been essentially the women's champion since then. I know she dropped the title briefly to Sasha Banks, but she won it back. She's had two very lengthy women's championship reigns. Now, there's certainly different ways to look at that. Could you say that as she had the title reign that long because there just hasn't been really any competition for her on Raw? That's probably true. I don't know if there's necessarily not been any competition. There's just been no one that's been booked worth any sense that could even come anywhere near Asuka. It kind of feels like that with Becky Lynch not there, with Ronda Rousey not there, with Charlotte Flair, who went away very quickly because, of course, she wasn't involved in the Raw Women's Championship picture. She was involved in the NXT Women's Championship picture of Rhea Ripley. She wins the title. She's off doing the NXT thing. And then, when was it, June? Around June time, she gets injured. She goes away. She doesn't come back till December. It felt like with those big names out of the picture, with no Becky Lynch, with no Ronda Rousey, with no Charlotte Flair, it felt like the writers and the officials, and I guess Vince McMahon or whoever, just stopped caring. They were focusing on the SmackDown Women's Division. They were focusing on Sasha Banks, on Bayley, on Bianca Belair, on Carmella. And what was happening on Raw when it came to the Women's Division just didn't matter. And Asuka really reflected that. And I feel bad for her because I just don't think she's been given the opportunities that other people have been given. And she's absolutely, the fact that she's still the champion and the fact that she still is credible is a testament to her, to be honest. But that's the status, that's the situation when it comes to the Raw Women's Division. Now, Rhea Ripley going to Monday Night Raw was absolutely the right call. She had done everything she could do in NXT. Frankly, I'm surprised that she stayed the extra year after last year's WrestleMania. To be honest, I wouldn't have been surprised if actually the plan was to have her be called up last year. Obviously, then the pandemic hit. For a period of time, there was a concern she might have to go back to Australia. There were some visa issues, that kind of stuff. But obviously, that was all sorted. And then I think it just came to a point of, okay, well, time has passed. Now isn't the right time. We can do it next year. Rhea Ripley's still very young. She's like 26 years old or something like that. There's plenty of time for her. So if it's an extra year in NXT, it's an extra year. And now she's up on the main roster. Now she's once again, you look at the last 2 years, she defended the NXT Women's Championship last year at WrestleMania. She's going to be challenging for the Raw Women's Championship this year. I think she's probably going to win. They have very big plans for her. I know people are concerned that maybe, does WWE get Rhea Ripley? Does WWE understand what they have? Does WWE really understand the character of Rhea Ripley and what she's capable of? The answer is absolutely. She wouldn't be in 2 championship matches in her first 2 WrestleManias if they didn't. So they know what they have. Was she a replacement for Charlotte Flair? It's a possibility. It's a possibility because this Raw Women's Championship match at WrestleMania has changed a couple of times. initially, the first plan was we were going to have Charlotte Flair versus Lacey Evans. That was going to be the Raw Women's Championship match at WrestleMania. It was going to still be the Ric Flair, Lacey Evans storyline. Charlotte Flair going up against her father's new partner, whatever you want to call her. That was going to be the plan. Of course, Lacey Evans is pregnant. Now she was on maternity leave. That storyline gets scrapped. So then the plan was, okay, we're just going to go with Charlotte Flair versus Asuka. We're going to go with a WrestleMania 34 rematch. We're going to go with, they faced off a ton of times before. It'll be a great match. Charlotte Flair will win because that's what she does at WrestleMania. She wins. She wins championships. She fights for championships at WrestleMania. There hasn't been a WrestleMania where she hasn't done that. This is the first time that hasn't happened this year. So that was the plan. And then obviously, we now know what happened when it comes to Charlotte Flair and just the craziness surrounding her. They told her she was pregnant. So she's pulled from WrestleMania. They find out she's not pregnant. There was just a craziness that's going on. And Rhea Ripley is then put in that spot instead. Now, one could argue, well, why didn't they put Charlotte Flair back in? She's been cleared. She did test positive for COVID-19, but she recovered from that a couple of weeks ago. Why hasn't she been added back into this match? And I think the answer there lies with Becky Lynch. We saw last night at WrestleMania that Bayley, she did a couple of segments. She did one backstage, because obviously Bayley's not booked for WrestleMania. She did one backstage where she was talking to Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Shawn Waltman, Hulk Hogan of the NWO. Titus O'Neil was involved. She was talking to them. Then later on in the show, during an on-camera before they go to the Hall of Fame stuff, Bayley just interrupts the commentary team and says that she's going to introduce the video package. She's there with Michael Cole. Now, there were rumors, wasn't there, that there was going to be a Ding Dong Hello segment during night one of WrestleMania that introduced Becky Lynch back to WWE. Obviously, we didn't see that, but that doesn't mean that won't happen tonight. In reality, Sunday's the traditional pay-per-view night. Sunday's the traditional WrestleMania night. Does it make more sense to do it tonight instead of last night if you're going to do the big Becky Lynch return? Maybe so. So, and how I tie that to Charlotte Flair is, what if it's not just Becky Lynch that returns? What if it's Charlotte Flair that also returns? And what if it's Ronda Rousey that returns? We saw last night. Last night, the main event was Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair. That was the second time female superstars have ever main evented WrestleMania. The first time two black female superstars have main evented WrestleMania. But the second time that female superstars have main evented WrestleMania. And the first female WrestleMania main event, of course, was 2019, WrestleMania 35, which was Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch. What a WrestleMania moment it would be if Bayley was able, in one of her Ding Dong Hello segments, to reunite that WrestleMania main event. That would be a pretty big WrestleMania moment. I compared it previously to the WrestleMania 30 moment with Hulk Hogan, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's not the same, but it would be a massive moment. It would be a massive moment, and it would be a fascinating segment to see. So maybe that's the reason. Maybe that's the reason that Charlotte Flair hasn't been added to this match. I think that probably makes the most sense. Now, when it comes to this match, I must say that the build to it hasn't necessarily been totally strong. I think it's probably arguable that the build hasn't been strong because, as I just mentioned, we actually had two matches that were planned before this one. So this obviously wasn't the first plan. I wasn't, and again, it felt like they didn't have a plan at all because last Monday on Raw, they had the whole, we're going to tag together, or can they coexist? Can they get along? And then Rhea Ripley turned on Charlotte Flair. I don't know if she necessarily is a heel. I know people were seeing that as a full-blown heel turn. I don't know. I don't know if that was just playing mind games or just, sending a message to Asuka saying, look, I'm all for winning this Raw Women's Championship come WrestleMania. I had my opportunity to compete at WrestleMania last year. I lost. I'm not going to let that happen again. So maybe that's the situation. Maybe that's the story that they go with this match going forward. In terms of a prediction, I think Rhea Ripley almost has to win. I think she has to win. Now, obviously, Asuka, she could win, and she's dominated Raw. As again, I don't know if it's necessarily just because the lack of focus on that Raw Women's division has maybe been the case with that, but she has really dominated Monday Night Raw. She could win. It could be another dominating performance, and it's a big WrestleMania moment for Asuka. But let's look at this. Not many people have defeated Asuka in WWE. If you defeat Asuka, it's basically a statement by the WWE creative team and the WWE officials that you're a made person. You're going to be a big deal. Whether it is Becky Lynch, whether it's Charlotte Flair, whether it's Ronda Rousey, whether it's whoever has beaten Asuka, it's a big deal, and they make sure to tell you that it's a big deal. So that could be the same for Rhea Ripley. I think this is going to be in the same way that Bianca Belair had a big crowning moment last night. I think Rhea Ripley is going to get a big crowning moment here. Is it going to be the same, big monumental crowning moment? I don't think so, but I kind of see it as you could look at it. You definitely could look at it as a WrestleMania 21 situation. That night wasn't like a reset by WWE by any stretch of the imagination, but it was certainly two distinct stars being made, and it was WWE saying, okay, these are the future two faces of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown at the time. So Batista wins the World Heavyweight Championship in the main event. He's going to be the face of Raw. And John Cena wins the WWE Championship from JBL. He's going to be the face of SmackDown. Now, ultimately, they switched in the end, but that was WWE anointing two champions on each brand at WrestleMania. And we saw how well that worked out for him that year. Who's to say we don't see a similar situation with the females this year? You know, you've anointed Bianca Belair as the SmackDown Women's Champion on night 1, and then you anoint Rhea Ripley as the Raw Women's Champion on night 2, and they're going to be the two next up-and-coming big female stars in the company. You've still got Sasha Banks, you've still got Bayley, you've still got Becky Lynch, you've still got Ronda Rousey to come back, you've still got Charlotte Flair. They're the established stars that have been around for a while, but it's also all about making new stars. And I know those established stars are going to be around for a while, and they're going to continue to be around for a while. I don't see them going anywhere, but if you can start churning out new stars, then you suddenly see a female roster that is just so rich with depth in it. And if you make two stars at WrestleMania, like Bianca Belair, like Rhea Ripley, suddenly that whole women's division just looks incredibly strong, incredibly strong. Then you add in an Asuka, you know, and you add in some other people in there, like Carmella, I think, does a good job as well. And then suddenly you start looking at NXT, Io Shirai, she's going to be coming up. There are some big female talents currently under contract to WWE, and by really anointing them and making and turning them into big stars by giving them their moments at WrestleMania, like you did last night with Bianca Belair, like you should do tonight with Rhea Ripley, then that becomes a big deal. And they've really made two big stars. So for me, I think that's probably the most likely scenario for me, that Rhea Ripley wins the title tonight and becomes the Raw Women's Champion. Shout out to her as well, because in the opening moments of WrestleMania last night as well, of course, we had the opening with Vince McMahon and the entire WWE roster on stage, and he welcomed everyone to WrestleMania, welcomed the WWE Universe back in attendance, and then America the Beautiful was sung. But Rhea Ripley was actually on stage with everyone, the entire roster was, and they were all in their gear as well, which I thought was a nice touch. Apart from Roman Reigns, who was in this cool business suit. But they were all on stage, and Rhea Ripley was there, and she was in tears. She was very, very emotional. She was standing there, she was crying, and I think she hasn't come out and said why, but I think there's several reasons probably why. I mean, one, it was just an incredibly emotional moment, not having a crowd there for over 12 months, and having the America the Beautiful playing, and the crowd chanting. It just felt like a really big moment. When there was just seconds to go before WrestleMania went on the air last night, there was just this buzz. You can go back and watch my reaction to it live as it was happening on the watch along. There was just this like buzz of this feels right, this feels big, and we've waited so long. It felt like Christmas. And Rhea Ripley, she was emotional by it. And again, I think it's maybe because of that. I think it's also because of last year, she wasn't sure if she would ever get that opportunity again. Like, she had the opportunity, or she was going to have the opportunity to step into WrestleMania 36, defend the NXT Women's Championship against Charlotte Flair. It was going to be 70,000 people there. Her family from Australia was going to be there. It was going to be a massive, massive moment for her. And then ultimately what happens, it gets ripped away. They even did a thing where she was on television, Rhea Ripley, and she was walking around Raymond James Stadium, and she was saying, I can't wait to perform here. And then it didn't happen, of course, because of the pandemic. They moved to the Performance Center on a closed set in front of 0 fans. She loses the NXT Women's Championship, and then after that, she was off of television for a while, and she spoke about losing her confidence because she wasn't sure what was right to do anymore, and she wasn't sure if she was doing the right thing, if she was on the right track. So talk about going from a really big high to a really big low just in the space of a couple of weeks. And I'm sure that was a very difficult time. And she was trying to figure out what was going on at the time, and would she ever get back to that opportunity? Would she ever get to perform at WrestleMania again? Was that her big chance, and had fate ripped it away from her? All that kind of stuff does play on you. So I think that's understandable why she was emotional last night. I think that's understandable why she had the tears in her eyes. I think a lot of people had tears in their eyes as well. It was a massive moment, and it felt like a really big moment. And hopefully tonight she gets that big moment, and I think she will. I do think she's going to leave as the Raw Women's Champion. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the Raw Women's Championship match tonight at WrestleMania 37, Night 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to WrestleNews365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.